My husband and his friends deemed it humorous to abandon me in a small Italian town following a heated argument. "Just see how she gets back," they jeered, roaring away in their car. I didn't return. A month later, he tracked me down in Greece. I was already starting anew. "Now see how you get back," sneered Gabriel, his voice cutting through the afternoon air as he slammed the car door shut. The taillights of our rented vehicle, shrinking into the curve of the Italian alley, faded into the dust and echoes of laughter. I stood paralyzed, my mouth agape mid-sentence. The dispute, unfolding before the small cafe, lost all meaning in the face of this impulsive act. "He'll come back," I whispered to myself, attracting curious glances from diners seated at outdoor tables. It was just to scare me, I reasoned. Yet, a knot tightened in my stomach as minutes stretched into hours, the sky darkening over that unfamiliar town whose name I couldn't quite pronounce. When I'd pleaded with Gabriel not to drink so much at lunch, I never imagined things could escalate this far. His friends, fellow university classmates celebrating an annual boys' reunion, to which I had been reluctantly invited, joined in when I suggested returning to the hotel. "He's always controlling you, man," Pitt remarked, requesting another round the instant I rose to depart. Gabriel followed me, his words slurred by alcohol, but his anger sharp. The argument devolved quickly, years of resentment bubbling to the surface on both sides. "Your purse has the passport, right?" he scoffed before settling into the driver's seat. "So get going. You're so clever, always telling me what to do." Night fell and reality crashed down. The picturesque town, a postcard by day, now felt menacing. I counted my money, $80 and $37. Insufficient for a return flight, barely enough for a cheap room. My cards were in Gabriel's wallet. He had offered to carry them when my purse became overloaded. I found the most affordable pension I could locate, a dingy room above a bakery with a narrow bed and a sink tucked away in a corner. The elderly woman who showed me the room, though unable to speak English, seemed to understand my plight, her hands gently patting my arms in sympathy. "He blocked me," I muttered, incredulously staring at my phone. 27 calls to Gabriel, all going straight to voicemail. Messages arrived, yet no one responded. I tried Pitt, then Marco, then each of the men in that car. All blocked. A shiver ran down my spine. It wasn't a fleeting impulse. It was a calculated humiliation. Sleep arrived in fragments, punctuated by hopeful phone checks and new waves of panic. In the morning, I convinced myself that this nightmare would end. Gabriel would appear contrite, but ready to blame me for taking the joke too seriously. I would be furious, yet relieved enough to move on, back to our carefully constructed life in Boston, where he was a respected architect, and I, the dutiful wife, had abandoned my own design career to manage the household and social calendar. But he didn't return. On the second day, I rationed my remaining funds, purchasing only a panini for lunch as I explored the town, scouring hotels and restaurants for any sign of our group. That evening, I realized they had followed their planned itinerary, heading to Florence without me. By the third day, a cafe owner, noticing my aimless wandering outside, offered me a free espresso and, with broken English, directions to the local police station. The officer seemed unfazed by my story, as if abandoned tourists were commonplace. However, our limited communication, his halting English and my non-existent Italian, resulted in only a police report and a perfunctory nod of solidarity. That afternoon, I made the most difficult decision of my life. Before the cramped window of a pawn shop, I wrestled with the wedding ring on my finger, the 2-carat diamond Gabriel had given me on our 5th anniversary, replacing the modest band that marked our beginning. The owner offered far less than its worth, but enough to fund the next step of my journey, whatever it might be. "Sell it to the family," suggested the pawnbroker, tallying the euros. An automatic assent, but inside, another plan began to take shape. Family meant explaining everything, hearing my mother's "I told you so," facing friends who had already noticed the cracks in our marriage, the ones I had desperately tried to conceal. Confronting Gabriel's temperament also meant facing friends who had seen the fissures in our marriage I desperately tried to hide. The bus station was silent when I arrived. The electronic display showed destinations I'd only seen in travel magazines. A nighttime bus to Rome followed by ferries and more buses. Places where Gabriel and his friends wouldn't bother looking for me if they ever had bothered. My finger hovered over my father's name in my contacts. One call, and he would send money for a return ticket. A call, and I would return to the life I had painstakingly built, shrinking day by day to fit within Gabriel's inflated ego and demands. I remembered the day Gabriel jokingly hid my portfolios when I mentioned wanting to return to interior design. "Why complicate things?" he'd asked. "We don't need the money," and I need you focused on our life." I laughed then, but sitting there in that grimy station, I saw it for what it was. Another fence in the corral he'd built around me. "Where are you going?" asked the ticket agent, a kind-faced woman who had watched me stare at the departure board for nearly 20 minutes. "Greece," I replied, the decision solidifying as I spoke. "To the furthest coastal village the attendant can direct." 14 hours later, I stumbled out of the final bus. My body ached from the uncomfortable seats and the tension. The scent of the sea and olives greeted me as I absorbed the whitewashed buildings of a village whose name I couldn't pronounce. My phone's battery had died somewhere between countries. My stomach rumbled with hunger, and the weight of what I had done, or what had been done to me, pressed down on my shoulders. Fatigue blurred the edges of my vision as I walked towards what appeared to be the village center. 3 days of emotional roller coaster left me raw, oscillating between Gabriel's anger, the fear of an uncertain future, and a strange, almost dangerous flicker of something that felt remarkably like freedom. The remaining euros might cover 2 nights in the cheapest room I could find. After that, I had no plans, no friends, no knowledge beyond please and thank you in the local tongue. Yet, as I watched the sun paint the Aegean waters gold and rose, a quietude descended. The relentless Greek sun beat down, a stark contrast to the weariness that had settled upon me, a weight I hadn't felt in years. I was further from the village than I'd anticipated, each step a slow, agonizing trek. My ill-fitting sandals chafed, blisters forming, and the relentless heat sapped my strength. My water bottle, long empty, was a stark reminder of my inadequate preparation. Dehydration, hunger, and emotional exhaustion created a dizzying vortex around me. Dusty paths lined with silvery green trees, their leaves shimmering like wind-tossed coins, offered little respite from the encroaching fatigue. "Olive trees," I whispered, a momentary flicker of recognition, just before my knees buckled beneath me. The earth met my face, the impact muted by the encroaching darkness. A strange calm settled over me, a strange sort of acceptance, perhaps even a poignant beauty. Abandoned by my husband in a foreign land, here I was, collapsing alone in a foreign place, far from the familiar comforts. Closing my eyes, I surrendered to the accumulated exhaustion, the weight of Gabriel's departure pressing down on me. A woman's voice, sharp and clear, sliced through the fog of my consciousness, followed by the reassuringly firm touch of calloused hands that gently turned me over. A wrinkled face, etched with the lines of a long life, and warm eyes, brimming with concern, met mine. She spoke rapidly in Greek, patting my cheek and extending a small leather flask. The cool water revived me, a fragile flame reignited within. With renewed strength, though my head still swam, I managed to sit. She introduced herself as Helena, repeating the name as she gestured towards herself. "Alexis," I managed, echoing the gesture, my voice weak and trembling. Helena's small frame held a surprising strength as she helped me to my feet. She pointed toward a stone house nestled amidst the olive trees, her fingers mimicking a walking motion. I nodded, utterly devoid of energy to protest, and let her guide me up the slope. The aroma of herbs hung heavy in the air, mingling with the enticing scent of something simmering on an antique stove. Helena led me to a weathered table, calling out for someone. A gruff voice answered, and moments later, a sun-weathered man with a silver beard and a face like weathered granite emerged, wiping his hands on a linen cloth. "Nikos," Helena declared, indicating him. A tentative nod, a questioning glance, but also gentle recognition, was exchanged between us. Helena filled a glass with cool water, pushing it towards me. Then she presented a bowl of simple soup. My stomach rumbled with anticipation, a sound that sparked a smile in Helena's face. The rest of the evening was a blur of fragmented communication. I attempted to articulate my plight using a few words, gestures, and ultimately tears, trusting that she would understand, though I knew complete comprehension was impossible. Nikos remained quiet, yet attentively followed along, occasionally asking questions that Helena translated through gestures. They offered me the guest room, a simple space with whitewashed walls, a narrow bed, and hand-stitched bedding. Exhausted, I succumbed to a sleep I hadn't realized I needed. Awakening to the melody of roosters and the scent of freshly baked bread, I was greeted by clean clothes, a simple cotton dress and cardigan. They lay neatly folded at my bedside, worn but freshly laundered, a welcome contrast to the travel clothes clinging to my body. In the kitchen, Helena greeted me with a smile, offering strong coffee, bread, and honey. As the day brightened, the weight of shame settled over me. These strangers had embraced me unconditionally, providing sustenance and comfort. I needed to explain, to repay them in some way. Using my phone's translation app, charged thanks to an adapter Nikos thoughtfully procured, I attempted to express my gratitude and to explain that I planned to return to the village. Helena's face fell. She firmly shook her head, pointing towards the rain drumming against the window, and then my own, still tender, feet. "Ah, Fika," she insisted, using the few words of English she knew. "Descansa." Over the next 3 days, I attempted to leave repeatedly, but each attempt met with kind but firm resistance. Helena, holding a purse, intercepted me at the door. A wounded expression filled me with guilt. She took my hand, leading me to a wooden box nestled in the hearth. Opening it, she revealed photographs. Her trembling fingers pointed to a young woman, eyes mirroring Helena's, a smile like Nico's. "Sophia," she whispered, then gestured far away, towards Australia. Tears welled as she mimicked cradling a baby, her hand demonstrating the child's height. "Granddaughter," she managed, pointing to a recent picture of an infant. In that moment, I understood. Helena had seen in me a substitute for her distant daughter and granddaughter, someone to fill that void. Instead of feeling manipulated, my heart ached with longing for her. I slowly hung my purse back on the hook. Each day brought new routines as I integrated into the farm life. Helena taught me to collect eggs without disturbing the hens, to hang laundry so the mountain wind dried it quickly. Nico demonstrated how to differentiate weeds from herbs in the garden. His patience was evident when I mistakenly pulled up a beneficial herb. The work was manual, a stark contrast to the polished life in Boston, but it was satisfying in a way I had forgotten. My body, accustomed to fancy gyms and timed workouts, protested. New calluses formed. Unknown muscles ached throughout the night. Over days, the pain diminished. My strength increased. More importantly, the mental loop of abandonment gradually subsided, replaced by simple concerns of rural tasks and learning the language. At night on the porch, while Helena knitted and Nico smoked his pipe, moments of peace emerged. The betrayal still stung, but amidst the ancient olive trees and the rhythm of country life, a new perspective emerged, less an ending, more an unexpected chapter. 2 weeks after my arrival, Helena sat beside me while we shelled peas. She examined my face thoughtfully before asking slowly, in the English she had learned, "Home? You will not return home?" She fashioned a paper airplane and pointed towards the United States. The question hit me hard. Home. The word evoked our sophisticated Boston townhouse, with its meticulously designed furniture and decor. It also brought back Gabriel's control, the management of finances that left me without my own access, the subtle ways he had distanced me from friendships, his disinterest in my professional ambitions. Tears flowed as words tumbled forth in a language Helena didn't fully grasp but understood the emotions. I recounted the betrayal, the years of sacrificing parts of myself to maintain peace, the humiliation of being discarded like unwanted baggage. Helena's weathered hand rested on mine. When I finished, she pointed to my heart, then to the farm, finally to me. The message was clear. I had a place there. "If I wished to stay," I said, mimicking Nico, "I stay. I work." Helena's smile blossomed like the sunrise over the Aegean Sea. She nodded, squeezed my hand, and returned to the peas, as if we had agreed upon something as simple as tomorrow's menu, not the complete reinvention of my life. My decision to stay marked the beginning of my olive cultivation education. The following morning, still with stars in the sky, Helena roused me from bed and handed me work clothes and sturdy boots that had belonged to Sophia. Half asleep, I followed her and Nico to the olive grove, where the first rays of light barely outlined the ancient trees. "Eli?" Helena explained, pointing towards the branches. Carrigados demonstrated the proper technique, gently combing the branches with wooden picks to dislodge the olives onto nets spread on the ground. My initial attempt scattered twigs and leaves along with a meager handful of olives, earning a patient correction from Nico. Mid-morning, the sun already scorched. My shoulders ached from the exertion, and my Bostonian hands sported the first blisters, a sight that Helena observed with a chuckle, examining my palms. During lunch break, she vanished into the house and emerged with a homemade balm, scented with herbs and beeswax. Relief was immediate as she applied the ointment to my raw skin. "Your hands will mend," she promised, and surprisingly, she was right. Each day, I improved my technique, refined my strength, and developed calluses on my hands. Within a few weeks, I was working alongside them for hours, proud of the mountains of harvested fruit. Sorting the olives was even more demanding. Seated at a long table under a pergola, we separated the olives by quality. Perfect ones for premium oil, lightly spotted ones for second-grade oil, and damaged ones for soap. Initially, Helena watched me with hawk-like eyes, correcting mistakes with gentle touches. Gradually, these corrections diminished as my eye caught the subtleties. You learn quickly. Nico complimented one evening, his English improving alongside my halting Greek. It was the warmest praise he had ever given me, a pleasant warmth spreading through my chest. Helena's kitchen, seemingly old-fashioned at first glance, also imparted lessons. In Boston, I considered myself a competent cook, following gourmet magazine recipes to impress Gabriel's colleagues. But Helena's cooking was untainted by measuring cups and thermometers. Her knowledge was passed down through generations. "Observe," she'd say, kneading bread dough. I imitated her movements, but initially failed miserably. My first loaves from the stone oven were crooked, with holes inside or burnt. Helena would encourage me, breaking down even the worst examples to test them, emphasizing that learning from mistakes was valuable. The way she handled errors with an almost matter-of-fact acceptance was revolutionary for me. In my previous life, mistakes were something to hide, not stepping stones to progress. The simplicity of their meals starkly revealed how industrialized my American diet had become. Here, everything came from their land or nearby farms. Vegetables still warm from the sun, morning-laid eggs, roadside goat cheese. The flavors were vibrant and clean, enhanced by a drizzle of olive oil, lemon, and herbs from Helena's garden. My body changed with this combination of diet and labor. My designer clothes loosened, and extra weight disappeared, replaced by sculpted muscles. My skin, previously maintained with expensive creams, now glowed with olive oil, simple soap, and honest sweat. When I saw my reflection in the bathroom mirror, I stared at a stranger, tanned, strong, and more present, though lighter in stature. As my Greek vocabulary expanded, Helena and I found new ways to communicate beyond food and work. During evening breaks, she would bring out photo albums, pointing to black and white images of her youth in the village. I was astonished to discover that she had once been a teacher before returning to the family olive business. And you asked? Mimicking typing, I showed her photos of my pre-marriage interior design projects on my phone. Gabriel called them hobbies, but Helena analyzed them with genuine interest, pointing out elements she liked and sharing insightful thoughts, while thoughtfully tapping her temple. This quiet acknowledgement brought tears to my eyes, a vulnerability that Gabriel seemed to be subtly minimizing. One rainy afternoon, Helena taught me to knit. Her patience was infinite with my dropped stitches and crooked rows. My first complete project was a simple, pitted cash pot, entirely handmade. I draped it around my neck, more proud than I'd felt wearing the designer cashmere Gabriel had given me for Christmas. Other handcrafted pieces followed. A clay mug molded under Nikos's guidance, and a woven basket learned from a neighbor. Each item held hours of connection and story, qualities no purchased luxury could offer. My collection grew as my attachment to material perfection diminished. After 3 months of living solely on lodging and meals, Helena called me one morning, Nikos by her side. They led me to the olive oil press and bottling room, showcasing our modest harvest. "Market day," Helena announced, pointing to the calendar. The village market buzzed with activity. Farmers and artisans displayed their wares. Locals and tourists alike strolled through the crowds. Helena and Nikos set up their simple table, arranging bottles of golden green olive oil, olive soap, and jars of preserved olives. To my surprise, they positioned me at the front of the line to greet customers. My broken Greek and their limited English sparked confusion and laughter, yet sales steadily climbed throughout the day. As the market closed, Helena handed me an envelope of euros. "Your share," she simply said. "Fair work, fair pay." I considered the modest sum, perhaps the cost of one dinner at the restaurants Gabriel and I frequented, but this money represented something I hadn't possessed in years. Independence earned through my own labor, free from hidden expectations of gratitude or obedience. It was honest reward for honest work. That evening, I placed the envelope beneath my pillow, touching it occasionally to confirm its reality. In 10 years of marriage, Gabriel had managed the finances, leaving me with cards linked to accounts he monitored. This small pile of euros was the first step toward rebuilding a life of my own. As I drifted off to sleep, I realized I hadn't thought of Gabriel all day at the market. My thoughts were occupied with Greek phrases and the pride in our products. The space he once held in my mind had shrunk, replaced by olive groves, lessons in cooking, and the growing certainty that I was capable of much more than he had let me believe. The following week, Helena and Nikos invited me to dinner at the Square's Tavern, my first outing since arriving. Wearing a blouse borrowed from Helena, my heart pounded as I entered the bustling establishment. The owner, Stelios, greeted the couple with enthusiastic hugs before casting a curious gaze at me. "Our American," Helena introduced me in Greek, a language I was now familiar with. Stelios warmly smiled and led us to a table clearly reserved for them. Amidst grilled fish and village wine, Nikos cleared his throat and spoke in cautious English. "Alexis, we'd like to discuss business with you." His seriousness startled me. Had I done something wrong? Was it time to leave? Helena placed her arm across the table, gently patted my hand, and picked up where her husband had left off. "We're old," she explained, gesturing towards herself and Nikos. 68, 70 years of age, adding, "We have no children here and Sophia doesn't come back." Nikos nodded gravely. "We're thinking of retiring in 2 to 3 years. He gestured towards the orchard. "But these olive trees are 200 years old and need young hands." My breath caught in my throat as I understood. Helena smiled, lines etched around her eyes. "You learn quickly, work hard, and we'll teach you everything." Then she extended her hand. With hands conveying something precious, they offered me a future I hadn't dared to imagine. A newcomer, barely known to them, I had arrived in their lives only months before. Yet, they entrusted me with a legacy. "But I don't know enough," I stammered. "The trees, the press, the commercial side." "You learn," Nikos replied firmly. "We teach without haste." That evening marked the start of my true apprenticeship. I was no longer just an extra pair of hands. I had become an inheritor of generations of knowledge. Every morning, Nikos guided me through different olive groves, explaining how varying soil types affected the flavor profile, how to detect diseases early, and the precise harvesting time for optimal olive oil quality. Helena meticulously managed the records, handwritten account books and simple spreadsheets, the legacy of her grandson's visit years past. While functional, these methods were outdated. Recognizing a chance to contribute beyond manual labor, I spent nights modernizing the system, creating digital records that streamlined inventory control and sales. I demonstrated the improved system to Helena, filtering the spreadsheet to highlight which varieties sold best at each market. Her eyes widened at the emerging patterns. "Clever girl," she murmured, a nod of approval. "Great for business." With their blessing, I began subtle marketing adjustments. New labels featuring flavor notes and suggested pairings adorned the bottles. A simple brochure explained the traditional method, addressing the questions tourists frequently asked at the market. My improving Greek opened doors beyond Helena and Nikos' circle. The pharmacist who supplied Helena's blood pressure medication started engaging in conversations extending beyond prescriptions. The baker's wife invited me to a weekly gathering of local women, a valuable immersion into local customs and language. Steves, the tavern owner, became an unexpected ally, featuring our premium olive oil on his tables and highlighting the new label. "Good for you, good for me," he winked. Word of mouth spread quickly. 2 restaurants in neighboring villages approached us. 6 months later, I attended the butcher's granddaughter's baptism, my first formal celebration in the village. Deep in the small church, I observed the ritual, a knot tightening in my throat. The elderly priest noticed my presence and specifically greeted me, then struggled with a learned English from his seminary days in Athens. "You have breathed new life into the old olive grove," he said, his eyes glistening with moisture. "It is good for the village. The young people leave for Athens, for America. We need new blood." This welcoming gesture broke down the last barrier. Invitations poured in, saints' festivals, impromptu barbecues on the beach, summer festival committee meetings. Each event wove another strand into the network that bound me there. Anna, the weaver whose stall was next to ours at the market, became a close friend. A middle-aged widow, her quick wit and pragmatic nature reminded me of a college classmate. Our conversations, a blend of my developing Greek and her excellent English, encompassed sales strategies, village gossip, and personal reflections. "You never talk about America," she remarked one afternoon as we sorted unsold goods. The question pierced me. I had been so focused on building this new life that I had pushed the old one into a corner. My parents were gone, some friendships had faded, and I realized how Gabriel had gradually isolated me, always finding fault with my companions. The news, delivered with a bluntness that was both refreshing and unsettling, arrived via a flurry of messages and calls. Anna's candid pronouncements, a stark contrast to the constant politeness of Helena and Nikos, pierced the months of silence. "Gabriel," she stated, the name echoing uncomfortably after so long. He had never sought her out, a fact that, ironically, held a certain clarity. Her honesty, a breath of fresh air, forced a reckoning with the past. I admitted to myself that I had been avoiding my phone, using it primarily for taking pictures. My social media accounts and emails in the United States had been abandoned, a cowardly evasion of the potential truths I feared they held. Iana's raised eyebrow acted as a subtle nudge, a gentle challenge. Perhaps it was time to confront the situation, not for him, but to definitively close the door on that chapter of my life. The words hung heavy in the air that evening. Following dinner, I retreated to my room and activated the ancient telephone. Leveraging the rudimentary internet connection on the farm, I accessed my neglected email inbox. Hundreds of unread messages awaited, reflecting the evolution of those relationships from shared nostalgia to concerns. A wave of embarrassment washed over me. My unexplained disappearance had caused anxiety among my friends. An email from my former design mentor caught my attention. It detailed a remote sustainable materials consulting opportunity, a position she had suggested for me. The job was still open, according to a recent email. This unexpected bridge to my past stunned me. Then another sender's message froze my fingers. Gabriel Davis, I know where you are. The timestamp revealed his arrival just hours before. A pounding heart and a surge of anger collided within me. How dare he think he could simply reclaim me like lost baggage? My phone clutched tightly in my hand, I stumbled downstairs. Helena, engrossed in her ledger, looked up, her smile vanishing at the sight of my face. Any news from America? She inquired gently. Gabriel will be here on Thursday, I managed to say. Helena's eyes narrowed, her gaze scrutinizing mine. She pulled an envelope from beneath the ledger and slid it across the table. Timing couldn't be more perfect. I've saved this for the right moment. Inside, I found legal documents, drafted in Greek and accompanied by English translations. My name was listed alongside Helena and Nikos. A partnership agreement, a 1/3 stake in the business. Not a job, not an internship, but a legitimate partnership. Not just a roof over my head, but the foundation upon which to build. It's not charity, it's earned recognition, Helena affirmed, tapping the document. You decide what happens on Thursday. You have a home here, a business here, and friends here. She pointed to the phone in my hand. He doesn't control you anymore. The weight of those words descended upon me, a cloak of certainty. Since being abandoned in that Italian town, this was the first time I felt not just surviving, but rooted. Gabriel would arrive, but would find a woman profoundly changed. The ensuing days were a flurry of preparation, not of packing or tearful goodbyes, but of emotional strengthening. I consulted Katerina, the village's sole lawyer, assisting me in drafting divorce papers in both Greek and English. I contacted my former mentor, accepting, albeit cautiously, the remote consulting role. Brief, no-excuses explanations were sent to old friends. Thursday dawned, bathed in the perfect Greek light. The sun-drenched processing shed held me with Nico, testing olive oil samples, when a rental car engine roared, shattering the afternoon stillness. Helena materialized in the doorway, her face a blend of apprehension and resolve. He's arrived, she simply stated, her voice trembling slightly. I wiped my hands on my apron and hurried outside. Gabriel stood beside a silver sedan, his designer sunglasses perched on impeccably styled hair, surveying the modest home with distinct disdain. He wore the expensive travel attire I recognized from countless business trips, a tailored chino suit and shirt, likely costing more than a week's worth of olive oil profits. He didn't immediately notice me, granting precious seconds for me to compose myself. This man, once the center of my universe, appeared smaller, less substantial, against the ancient olive trees and weathered stones that were now my sanctuary. Gabriel? I called, my voice surprisingly calm. He turned, and the shock on his face nearly made me laugh. His gaze swept down from my work boots to my sun-baked arms, pausing on my simply tied hair. I saw the conflict between recognition and disbelief etched in every wrinkle of his expression. My God, Alexis, what happened to you? The reproving tone that once spurred me to mend my ways now struck rock solid. Life, I replied, walking slowly. What brings you here, Gabriel? He removed his sunglasses. The practiced charm emerged as he spread his arms wide. To take you home. No, I interrupted, stepping out of his reach. It's about building a life, not proving a point. His smile faltered. Behind me, I heard Helena and Nico exit the house, silent as silent guardians. Gabriel noticed them. They're the ones keeping you here, his features hardening. If so, they've taught me about olives, community, and unconditional kindness. I pointed to the olive grove. I'm a co-owner now. I have a business here. The surprise transformed into familiar condescension. Business, Alexis? Be serious. You're a designer, not a farmer. This is a phase like eat, pray, love. I shouldn't have left you in Italy, he said, It was stupid and reckless. I apologized. When? In what world is tracking me down and demanding my return and apology? His jaw tightened. All right, I apologize for leaving you in Italy. It was immature and wrong. Now can we go? Why now, Gabriel? Months later? Why seek me out now? I countered, eyeing the elderly couple observing us. We can talk in the car. Specifically, they don't speak English, and I have nothing to hide. He sighed, his shoulders slumping. Your parents are calling friends. Clients are appearing at the house, and you're not there. It's bad for your image. I completed his thought. It's bad for your reputation. Our reputation, he corrected sharply. Our 10-year life, the life you built, where I became an accessory to your success. Do you realize how unhappy I was before Italy? He narrowed his gaze. We had a good life, a beautiful home, financial security, respect. What more could you want? Purpose, connection, autonomy. I pointed to the stone cottage. I found all that here, in the place you call backward. That's not you, he insisted, sounding desperate. The Alexis I know wouldn't trade comfort for hard work and poverty. You're right, I smiled. The Alexis you knew wouldn't. But she died in Italy when her husband abandoned her like a joke. Those who are here have made other choices. At that moment, Helena approached and placed something. The partnership agreement rested in my hand. Though the words held no clear meaning to her, she grasped the significance of the moment. I presented the document to Gabriel. I had deep roots here, a life and business built on respect. He exploded, branding the matter preposterous. Calmly, I also handed him the finalized divorce papers. You've forsaken me, he declared. He couldn't conceive of my flourishing. He threatened retribution. I chose freedom. Nikos placed a comforting hand on my shoulder, signifying the time for Gabriel's departure. As the car receded, I turned toward my home and my life. He aimed to shatter me. In doing so, he unknowingly set me free.